In this video, we are going to cover lower body pulling movements. It's going to mainly include exercises like the deadlift, the Romanian deadlift, and the glute ham raise. In order to fully grasp how a lower body pulling movement is performed, we need to have a good understanding of what the primary muscles are and what they're doing. First, we are going to look at the hamstrings. In the video, you can see where the hamstrings attach to the pelvis. As we hinge forward, our pelvis goes from a vertical position to a horizontal position. This causes a stretch in the hamstring muscles. Then in turn, when the hamstring contracts, it is going to bring the pelvis back to a vertical position. This is why a common cue in lower body pulling movements is to expect to feel a stretch in your hamstrings. As you can see, the glute muscle acts very much like the hamstring muscle. The glute mainly attaches to the iliac crest of the pelvis, and the other end attaches to the femur. As we hinge forward, this causes the pelvis to go from vertical to horizontal. Contracting the glute will help bring the pelvis back to a vertical position. Lastly, we are going to talk about the spinal erector muscles. A common mistake when performing these types of exercises is to allow the spine to bend. To avoid injury to the spine, we need to coach techniques to keep the spine neutral. This comes from engaging our spinal erector muscles. By engaging these muscles, we essentially pull back on the spine to stay neutral and fight the urge to bend from the weight. This is a great method to teach somebody how to hinge properly while keeping their back straight. Instruct them to take a dowel and put it behind their back. This dowel should be in contact with the back of their head, their upper back, and tailbone. Next, we will have them stand a foot from the wall and instruct them to reach their butt back until it comes in contact with the wall. From there, instruct them to squeeze their glutes as they return to the starting position. We want to make sure that they maintain contact with the dowel at all 3 points throughout the movement. Now let's talk about the deadlift. Approach the bar and place your feet underneath so the bar is over your midfoot, or a couple inches in front of your shin. Your feet should be about hip width apart. Bend forward and grab the bar shoulder width. Next, we will lower our butt until it is underneath the height of our shoulders, but higher than our knees. Pull your shoulder blades back to engage your lats and rhomboids, and finish by getting your chest up. This is the proper starting position of a deadlift. We are going to separate the upward phase of the movement into 2 different phases. As you can see on the left, the first phase mainly comes from knee extension. Because of this, the quadricep muscles will be considered the primary mover of the first phase. Another important thing to note is the torso stays at the same angle as the bar goes from the starting position to knee height. In the second phase, you can see that the largest contributor to lifting the bar comes from hip extension. This is where the glutes and hamstrings will take over the movement. It is important to cue squeezing the glutes during this phase. Lastly, it is important to be reminded that the activation of the spinal erectors is what allows us to keep our spine neutral throughout the movement. For the downward phase, we will start by reaching the butt back and allowing the bar to go straight down. This will come from bending at the hips and allowing for a slight bend at the knees. Continue to lower until the bar reaches knee height, at which point you will then bend the knees more until the plates reach the ground. If we bend the knees too much too early, they will get in the way of the bar going straight down and force us to move the bar away from our body and away from our center of gravity, which will cause added stress to our back. Once the plates tap the ground, perform another rep. A common exercise we use that is similar is the hex bar deadlift. The main difference is we step inside the hex bar, which makes the weight go around our body instead of in front of our body like the barbell deadlift. This, along with the handles that come up from the bar, allow us to not have to hinge as much to grab on. Lastly, since we don't have to avoid hitting our shins or knees with the bar, we can bend our knees more in the starting position, which allows the quadriceps to help more with the lift. This can make the hex bar deadlift resemble a deep squat in a lot of ways. The Romanian deadlift uses a lot of the same principles as the barbell deadlift from the floor. The big difference is when lowering the bar, we stop when the back becomes parallel to the floor, then push through our heels and squeeze our glutes to return to the starting position. This separates from the traditional deadlift by not needing to really recruit the quadricep muscles and put all of the work into our glutes and hamstrings. You can even perform a single leg Romanian deadlift. The benefits of this exercise is to train the glutes and hamstrings without putting as much pressure on the back. You can use less weight because you are only training one leg at a time, but the amount of force the spinal erectors need to produce is less as well. Of course, you also receive the benefit of working on balance. The last exercise we will look at is the glute ham raise. Although it looks different, the same principles that we have been talking about will apply. First off, the spinal erectors are engaged to make sure the spine stays neutral. We then instruct to push our ankles up against the pad and squeeze our glutes to recruit our hamstrings and glutes to produce enough force in order to extend our hips. We control ourselves down to feel a stretch in our hamstrings and then perform another rep.